something that we organized in 10 seconds, right? The fortunate occasion of the passing of Professor Arrow and the fact that Andreu was here and agreed to accompany me on this made it very fast arrangement. So all this is going to be very informal. Why did we want to do something so quickly? Well, first of all, because this is the first of a number of homages to Arrow that I am sure will be organized, and in which I hope we will have an opportunity to be more formal and deeper. So this is a first, which has its own advantages. And I think that, you know, I have gotten messages from many friends from all over the world, from Japan, from the States, from Europe, from everywhere, about the passing of Keneth Arrow, and they all coincide in the same thing, and it is that he was not only someone of immense stature as an economist. The common thing in all this is the sorrow for the loss of the person. And I think that this ability to well, his characteristics, you know, his generosity, his many virtues, make all of us who feel the need to talk about him, and that's what we are here for. Very informal. The word giant appears in every one of these communications. And his many contributions span all economics in the 20th century. Let me say just very shortly something about social choice, since he was the father of social choice among so many other things. And you know, social choice was reinvented in several periods. There is a period in the Middle Ages, there is that period, and then forgotten, and then there is a period in the times of the French Revolution, and then forgotten. So, and here again, we discovered what I would allow myself to say, the beauty of this field. And what he did with it was something incredible, because there was welfare economics developing since the beginning of the 20th century in a systematic manner in what was called the new welfare economics, and trying to discover tools to compare different outcomes of an economic society, and trying to put together different criteria, and, you know, compensation principles, all kinds of tools of economic analysis. And all of a sudden comes Arrow and says, well, let's take 2 steps back and look at what we are trying to do. What are we trying to do? To compare things? Well, that's establishing a valuable relation. Why are we so frustrated in the way we do it? Well, because we build in different curves that intersect. That's nothing like saying that we are frustrated because we don't get transitive preferences. And how do we try to do it? We try to do it by saying that, you know, if you want to compare 2 economic states, you must do it on the merits of these 2 economic states, not with reference to any other. And that's independence. And so, well, and then he says, well, you cannot do it. That's it. So you should not be so frustrated because you were trying to do the impossible. Except for the trivial thing, which consists of asking 10 people for something and then only attending what the first one of them told you, which is the big thing. So, and this he did very young. That was his dissertation, And he did for motivations that at the beginning looked like very simple, and then you know, developed into a whole field. But he did it also because he had had this great training in New York, where he had attended classes of logic. So it's this ability to attack the old problem with the new tools, the old problem with the new way of looking. That was so unbelievable. And he did it again and again with many other things. So since I suppose that Andreu will have much more to say about general equilibrium, I jump on that. But and of course, many other people, if we organize something, we will have to draft many people, because he touched every field, you know, health economics, insurance, certainty, of all sorts. But just to say small things that we forgot, no? You know, how do you call your basic index of risk adoption, no? Arrow is there, you know. When you use a CES function, you know, arrow is there. And then there are other things that I found sometimes. You know, I was working on max mean. Well, Arrow and Hurwitz developed different variations of max mean, which appear in Rothschild's collected works on uncertainty. And there are these beautiful papers of Arrow and Hurwitz, which in the 50s, where they looked at everything that had to be looked at, you know, adjustment processes, planning, which are certain precursors of things that didn't have this name, but are also, you know, what we would call mechanism design nowadays. So everything. So just to forget about to pass on the context, let me say a few things about his personality. You know? He had unbounded curiosity. I have here we have exchanged messages with several people. This is with Matt Jackson. No? He says, what will always impress me was that he was interested in everything and always asking questions, a constant curiosity. He found many deep answers, partly because he never stopped asking questions. Even the ones that seemed mundane sometimes ended up holding surprises. So he knew so many things about so many fields. And we took advantage of it. About 14, 15 years ago, we invited him to a congress about what was then the beginning of network theory that we held in Manresa. And he gave an incredible talk about all the economists who had already advanced the importance of networks in economics well before it became a fad. But he could point exactly. Unfortunately, I tried to push him to give me this talk for the Revista Española de Economía, but I never got it. That's the difficulty of asking things to the overcommitted person. But, you know, this is one instance. Another time I was having lunch with him at the faculty club at Stanford and mentioned that I was interested in random preferences. And he started telling me about how Valras had anticipated the importance of random preferences. This is something I didn't check, but just since now it's a fashionable topic, maybe someone wants to go back to Valras and check. But I'm sure that if Arrow said it, that was very important. But even beyond economics, one thing that impressed me very much, Arrow was not only very interested as a youngster in favoring the Republican side of our Civil War, but he kept contributing to the funds for protection of the refugees for such a long time that I even find that maybe he overdid it, maybe someone was taking advantage of him, because well into democracy he kept paying for the Spanish refugees. So that means what kind of good person he was. And he even, so that's all. By the way, I wanted to say that if other people in the audience have memories of Arrow or feelings about his influence, I mean, this is a very informal thing in which you are invited to contribute. The first time I visited Stanford, you know, I had already started my seminar and he arrived, so that's one of these things that impress you. You know, took off his helmet, his bicycle helmet. He biked until well above 90 to the office. That was well before. So. And in the audience, you try to see what's his reaction. He seemed oblivious, I don't know. But until the moment of questions, and then he asked me the right question. In fact, he was not a killer, so it was not a killing question, but it was a tough one. So that was very, very natural. In his last visit to Barcelona, he spoke at Salvador. Several of you are probably there. He gave us an incredibly lucid lecture about the shortcomings of what economists have achieved up to now. Not demeaning anything, but just encouraging for further and further research questions about expectations. And that was quite impressive for a man already 90, but what in fact touched me more was that when he finished, people applaud in general in these meetings, in particular in that case where it was well deserved. And then he raised, and he, you know, a person at 90 takes some energy to raise, and then he was looking in such a humble and generous way that this was really touching for me, much more even than thinking of all these contributions that are there to stay forever, to see that they have been made by someone who still was grateful for having been decent, when of course everyone did. So he's immortal, and he's immortal as one can be in many, many ways. And I don't know, this of course is not a very good approach, but that's what I have to say.
He has already said half of the things I had jotted down. Just a few words. We wouldn't be here doing this if Arrow was not out of the usual league. And to give this a concrete meaning, I think the only mystery about Arrow is why he only got one Nobel Prize. He deserves several. More surprisingly, he shared the Nobel Prize, and that's not to the credit of the Nobel Committee. He shared it with somebody very deserving, which was John Hicks. But clearly somebody knew that he will end up getting it, and so decided to get it out of the way when he still was relatively young. Which is surprising, because one of the remarkable things about Arrow is that it was impossible not to like him. He was endearing from every point of view. Because he was smart, but there are many smart people around the world. more important than smart, is that he was smart, quick, and deep. He practically didn't say anything which sounded superficial or trivial. So he always had to be listened because there could be something more interesting there. And he was that to the very end, which of course is not the usual. It's not the usual way. He was frail at the end, but he was physically frail, not mentally frail. He contributed all over. Salvador has mentioned social choice, and that I will refer to general equilibrium. Well, the Arrow-Debré model, but not only the Arrow-Debré model. He also was at the beginning of setting the standards finance model. You know, this model you have all studied that there are two periods of time 0, time 1, and then there is an asset that pays 1 unit of something in each of the different states of the world. And then if you have if there are S states of the world and S assets, with S assets you have complete markets. That is Arrow, which means that at the same time that he was doing the Arrow-Debré model and going and realizing that it was taking a direction of extreme abstraction, at the same time he was beginning to work on compensating that by, the Arrow-Debré model is a model where all trade happens at time 0, and after that you relax. That's very unrealistic. So at the same time that he was doing that, he was setting the basis of a theory where there was trade at every step. So it was a more recognizable world. Then it will come the economic markets were completed. There were enough assets. If there were not enough assets, Barberà was the first to develop in that direction. But the observation that this very abstract model, where there was no trade, could be in a very natural way mapped into a model where there was trade at every period. That's one of the many contributions of Arrow. Personal anecdotes or characteristics. He was very helpful. Politically, he was, I think, a left Democrat of his time. Not perhaps a left Democrat of now, but somebody that went through the Great Depression and participated in the general outlook that the Great Depression created in the United States. He studied in the City University of New York, which was a university of upward mobility of poor or relatively poor families. And from there he went to other things. He was in the war effort, during the war, and he was a meteorologist. So meteorology, while doing meteorology, he studied a lot of statistics. There's something to do with meteorology and statistics, and then he went on to what his thesis was to Scotland. No? What his thesis was in social choice, but I think he wrote it under Harold Hottenham. I think so, which the connection was meteorology and moving, meteorology, statistics and moving to economy. He was very helpful, always, I say, willing to help. I remember at the beginning days of the Pompeu Fabra University, we asked him to give the inaugural lecture. He gave the inaugural lecture, which was on higher education, and I have to find out a copy of the writing. Somebody has it, maybe you have it. I'm sure that Ramon Marimon has it, but I would like to reread it. And on that occasion, I remember that we spent a very long lunch, which lasted until 7 o'clock at Set Porters, where the owner of the Set Porters, which is a management professor, also participated. It was a very long conversation, over half of which was on the Spanish Civil War, of which he was very well informed, and where his side, I mean the Republican side, but in that conversation, actually, the family of the owner, that was there, his family, which were bourgeois owners of a restaurant, actually suffered in the war in the other side. So he was extremely interested and extremely curious to see all the shades. More anecdotes, a couple of anecdotes, one I heard, and the other is in the New York Times today. The first is about intensity. Was when they were young, he and his colleagues at Stanford, and they were working on modeling futures markets and doing theory about future markets. So in that, at some point, to do an experiment, they bought some futures on X. And they kept discussing back and forth, doing the theory, and as you know, the features, they never culminate. You sell them, etc. The point is that they got involved in the theory, they completely forgot that they had actually bought futures on X. So one day the university called and said that there was a truck full of X being delivered. They had brought X for such a day, and had completely forgotten about it. And the other that is today in the New York Times is about the curiosity. He knew everything. He knew about everything. So once his younger colleagues, must have also been at Stanford, decided to play a prank on him. So they will look for a totally obscure topic, and they will try to impress him with the completely obscure topic. So the completely obscure topic that they found was the breeding habits of whales. And so they feigned that they were sitting, several younger faculty, intensely talking about this topic. He passed by, "Oh, Ken, come, we are discussing and engage in the, intensely engaged in the breeding habits of whales, California, etc." And he was looking very, Arrow was looking very puzzled. And they kept talking about the Jones theory of the breeding habits. How did they come back to the same place, and the sounds. they had really made their point. And when it was at the end, Arrow proposed and said, "But why are you discussing this? I thought John's theory had completely been discredited by Evans." So that was really, he seemed to knew everything. Anyhow, I'm sure that somebody has some thought or anything.
If not, doesn't matter. But you had lunch with Arrow this time, Jordi?
No, I didn't have lunch, but I was visiting Stanford last year, and my office was in a side of the corridor where in the other side was his office. And he used to come to the apartment every Friday at least. So I remember Friday afternoons from my desk, I could see his office there. He had always the door open, and he was sat there and reading books, and he was regularly coming. And I still remember that there is these kid parties. There is a tradition in the department where the students, we don't have this tradition, but the students make jokes of the faculty. So it's an afternoon when everybody gets there. And I remember still he arriving a little late to the party, and he was still able to walk. And so he was around during this period. It was the 65th anniversary of the book. So together with the Department of Philosophy and some other department, it was a session or conference or a meeting where Amartya Sen came also. And I still remember Amartya Sen and Keneth Arrow talking about the book, but Keneth Arrow wanted to talk a lot, but with Amartya Sen this is something difficult. But at the end he was able to do so. So it was a nice meeting because he was remembering the starting, why he was thinking about the setting of the impossibility theory. I also still remember when he came for this meeting in the Manresa. I remember his wife. I don't know. I remember very much his wife. We had a dinner, and I don't know why I was seated close to his wife, and I found it extremely nice person. And when I picked up him in the hotel to bring him to the Autónoma, I said, in our way, there is a Sagrada Familia. If you want, I can pass by and see it. And he said, oh, well. And so we were going through, and I was explaining all this, and then I realized that he knew much more about Gaudí and Sagrada Familia. I lived 2 corners away, but he knew unbelievably more. And another thing during this visit is we had the coffee with, you remember, in the rectorate, a coffee with, sometimes we had this, to have a coffee, and different students were asking him about what they were doing, no? So it was people working on health economics, people in theory, in econometrics, and the way he was answering the question was unbelievable. I still remember this session, and he was also explaining a little bit the origins of the consolidation. And at the end, he had to sell the car. Something I would like to keep. And I still remember in '94, my first meeting in social welfare, when he gave the presidential lecture because he was the president of society. And I still remember myself, one of my first papers in the Congress. I remember Keneth Arrow in the room. But it means in Stanford everybody was talking extremely, although he had health problems lately, but still the meeting in which we were talking about the book was spectacular.
Well, as you see, we ended up doing what we expected, talking more about the person than about the work. I suppose there will be another time to talk about the work, but this way you get the feeling as well of what we wanted to convey, and there is no need to go further. Thank you for coming.
Let me mention a couple of things. Last time I saw him was August, 1 year and a half ago, in Jerusalem. He was extremely frail, but as I say, with a very good mind. Went there at least once or twice a year. Then once, he was during many years the president of the summer economics theory school that was very successful. And the last time I think I saw his name, his signature into something, I believe, I'm not absolutely certain, but I believe it was in the letter, in the declaration of Nobel Prizes of 20 or 22 American Nobel laureates, warning before the election of Trump and against in favor of Hillary Clinton. And I must say that the letter was so intense that I realized that Trump could win. They were clearly very, very alarmed. And so he must have been the first signatory, because that was another, he had everything, including that by alphabetical order he always came first.
Thank you.